Yo, what is up? Welcome to Ninja Geek Games. Heroes of Thargos, the Cursed Empire is a customizable card game that was funded through Kickstarter last year. You control a party of mighty champions in an attempt to complete various missions by developing and upgrading your heroes to become mightier. I'm not going to review the game in this video, but instead provide you with a tutorial on how to play head-to-head story mode and the solo variant of the game. For the head-to-head game, you face off against another player, trying to earn renown, but the story mode allows you to play through an epic campaign-like adventure that you can craft yourself. If, like me, you have no friends, don't worry. There is a solo variant where you take on rivals who also develop as the game progresses by changing its tactics and decisions over time. Although each game mode has different styles of play, they all have one thing in common. You get to customize your deck and party of champions before each game, which is a really rewarding experience, although can take some time. But the first thing we're going to do is look at card anatomy and the different types available. The game comes with 4 card types that are all colour coded and are termed characters, missions, lasting and action cards. Character cards never sit in your deck that are made up of the other 3 types consisting of 60 cards. All cards have a title and image, and the skull beneath this contains a letter that indicates the card type. That is, except for victory cards that have a victory point value instead. Apart from the character cards, the lasting, mission and action cards all have played as modifier values that are used to modify character stats. There may also be some form of special ability, and when constructing your decks you can have up to 4 of the exact same card, that is unless it contains a padlock symbol, which is a unique card where you can only have 1. Each of the character cards has a faction that they are associated with, and this is used in the advanced rules as a prerequisite to the other game mechanics. The character point values here are used to determine how many victory points you are aiming to collect through mission cards. When selecting your 4 characters to form your party at setup, you add the sum of all character point values in your party, and this total is the number of victory points you must gain through completing missions to win the game. This means if you create a powerful party, you'll need to complete more feats than the opposing player with a weaker party, but this actually balances out well. At the bottom of each character card you'll find 3 statistics for might, mind and mysticism, and these values can be permanently modified with lasting cards. On the reverse side of a character card is the injured version of the character that may have different sets of stats and abilities. Mission cards have a victory point value that you'll claim if you defeat it, as well as stat modifiers that are awarded to the defender when the attacking player attempts to fulfill a mission. Lasting cards will attach to character cards to improve their stats, and some may even have faction icons that are used in the advanced rules where they can only be played if the character has a matching icon. Lasting cards actually slip beneath character cards, modifying their stat values here. Lastly, action cards are played from hand and have a variety of abilities that can affect different aspects of the game. Regardless of which game mode you play, the rounds are pretty similar, as well as the goal, which is to complete missions to gain victory points in an attempt to gain a value equal to the total sum of your party's character points. In each round you'll draw cards to hand, attach lasting cards to your characters to modify their stats, play action cards or fulfill a mission card and check the victory point value total against winning conditions. Let's look at the head-to-head game. For setup, the first thing you need to do is to create your party of 4 hero characters and then a 60 card deck consisting of mission, lasting and action cards. Remembering you can have up to 4 of the same common card but only 1 unique card. Then each player draws 1 card and compares the played as modifier value, with the highest being the first player. If there is a tie, keep drawing to determine the first player to gain early bragging rights. The decks and any drawn cards are then shuffled. Each player then draws a hand of 6 cards where you're required to draw at least 2 mission cards. If your hand has less than 2 mission cards, you'll need to discard all 6 cards and draw again, following the same process until you have at least 2 mission cards in hand. The next thing to do is to place the character cards in the main battle area. The main game area is divided into 4 tracks. Now if you use the playmat, these are clearly marked, but if you don't, I lay out 4 unused cards to represent the 4 lanes of each track. Starting with the first player, you then take turns placing a character card on one track on your own side of the play area. Once players have placed all 4 of their characters, the second player then places 1 mission card from hand into the mission area of 1 track, again taking turns until each player has placed 2. Once you're set up, you're ready to play. Starting with the first player, they carry out 4 game phases followed by their opponent, and this continues until one player gains victory points equal to the sum of the point values of all 4 character cards, or your deck run dries, in which case you lose. During the first phase of the game, you draw cards from your deck until you have 6 cards in hand. If you are ever unable to draw from your deck because it's empty, you lose the game. The next step is the play phase, where you can attach 1 lasting card from hand to any one of your characters by sliding it beneath their card, making sure the stats are visible. Also, some lasting cards have special abilities that are active once attached, as well as permanently altering one or more of the character's base stats, and as the game progresses, you can have multiple lasting cards attached to each of your characters. The next step is the action phase, where you actually have one of 2 options to choose from. The first is to play an action card from hand for its ability, or you can attempt to fulfill one of the mission cards laid out in the tracks, and this is where the heart of the game lies. First, select any one mission you want to attempt, where the aim is to compete with the opponent for all stats present on the mission card, and in this case, it's just might. If you remember from looking at card anatomy earlier in the video, each card in your deck has a played as modified value in the top right corner that is termed PAM, and you can play any number of cards from hand to add the total PAM values to the character's stats in that track. That also includes any lasting bonuses. Now, your opponent gets to do exactly the same, noting that any time you play PAM cards, they should be placed face down so you don't know the value of the other player's cards. But in this example, it's easier to play them face up. The next step is for both players to reveal their PAM cards and sum up their stat value matching the victory condition stat of the mission card, which in this case is might. So for the active player, they add their might from their character card, any lasting cards, plus all the values of their PAM cards. And this gives a value of 10 might. The opponent in the same track does exactly the same, except that they get to add the value of the mission card stat, which here is an additional 1. The defender being able to use the mission card bonus thematically represents them scouting the area, knowing the layout of the land, or setting traps, for example. Now you compare the stat values of each of the card played. So for the attacker or the active player, their might value is 3 for the character card, 2 for the lasting card, and 5 for the PAM card, giving a total of 10, where the defender has 2 for the character card, 1 for their lasting cards, plus 1 from the mission bonus, and 5 for their PAM cards. This gives a total of 9. Now, if the active player's stat value equals or exceeds the defending player's total, they win and have fulfilled the mission. They can then claim the card and place it in their victory pile. The defending player must now replace this with one of their own mission cards from hand, but if they're unable to, they must draw and reveal cards one at a time from their deck until a mission card is revealed. And any cards drawn are then discarded. And this action quickly starts to exhaust your deck. However, if the defending player wins, then the mission card then stays put, and the active player must turn their character card to its injured side, keeping any lasting cards in place. Ha! 'Tis but a scratch. If you know, you know. Any cards then played for PAM values are discarded. Now, what we've discussed so far is fulfilling mission cards showing just one statistic, which was might, but there are a number of mission cards with 2 or sometimes 3 statistics present. To fulfill these, the active player must win at each mission stat present. Here, the same process is carried out, but when placing PAM cards, the active player can now distribute them across all available stats on the mission cards. So in this example, we'll assume we have 5 cards in hand, and the mission card that we're going to attempt shows stat icons for might, mind and mysticism. Now I can play any number of cards in hand as PAM cards and associate them with one or more of my character stats. I could, for example, place them all on mind or split them across all stats. Regardless, it's a good idea to mark the PAM cards with tokens or dice of the same colour as the stat attribute that they are playing bonus to, so players remember which stack applies to which stat. For the defending player, a simple tactic here would be to pull all PAM cards on just one stat to prevent the active player from winning, as the defendant needs to only win on any one stat to prevent the active player from fulfilling the mission. But this can only be done if the active player also plays PAM cards to just one stat. Therefore, the defender can only play PAM cards on the same stats as chosen by the other player. As a ruling, the defending player cannot ever place PAM cards associated with a particular stat if the active player didn't do the same. However, in our example, the active player plays PAM cards across all three stats. When the defender plays their PAM cards, they must do so one at a time, and they cannot place a card in a second stack until all other statistics have received one card. Again, a single stack cannot contain a third card until the others have two each. This prevents the pooling of PAM cards that would make it too easy for the defender to win. As mentioned previously, when PAM cards are played to each stack, they are played face down so the players don't know what the opponent is doing. Once the PAM cards are revealed, each player then sums up the stat value for Might, Mind and Mysticism separately to include the stat bonuses for character card, lasting cards and the PAM card values for each stat. To win and claim the mission card, the active player must equal or exceed the defending player's value in each stat present on the mission card. Fail just one of these stats and they lose, injuring their character. Note that if an injured character becomes injured again, nothing happens. Now, a few things to take into consideration when playing PAM cards. Firstly, as the active player, if your value for any one stat from character and lasting cards is at least equal to the defending player's stat value of character, lasting cards and bonus from the mission card, then do not place PAM cards. It's a waste of resources, as a draw means you win anyway, plus you give the defender the opportunity to then play PAM cards, which is risky business. Also, don't get carried away with overloading a mission with PAM cards. Your deck represents your health and you could end up wasting good cards or exhausting your deck quite quickly. The last step of the round is the score phase, where the active player checks to see if the sum of all claimed mission card victory points equals or exceeds the sum of all 4 character point values. If it does, they win the game. If not, the opponent then gets to carry out the same 4 phases and the game continues. There are multiple variants of this head-to-head mode that include multiplayer, assigning factions, quick modes and tournaments, but I'm not going to discuss these here. But next up, solo mode. In solo mode, you play against an AI rival where you'll need to gain your victory point value before the AI does, but you'll also lose if you run out of cards. You'll need to keep track of AI infamy and attitude that changes throughout the game, causing the rival to get stronger as the game progresses. Once you've created decks for yourself and the rival, the first thing you need to do is determine the AI attitude by rolling a d6, where 1 to 2 is aggressive, 3 or 4 is wary, and 5 to 6 is defensive. This represents the rival's feelings towards you during the game. This result can be recorded with the token on the attitude card, but I just use a coloured dice, red for aggressive, green for wary, and blue for defensive. The attitude of a rival dictates how many cards in its attack and guard cache it starts the round with. As we roll the 1, the attitude is aggressive, with the AI starts each round with 4 cards in the attack cache and 2 in the guard cache. If the rival was wary, it would be 3 in each cache, and if defensive, it's 2 in the attack cache and 4 in the guard cache. And these caches are just play areas to store the rival cards on their side of the playmat. The rival infamy track is set to 0, where again you can use a token, but I use a dice where the infamy level dictates how many additional cards are placed in the attack or guard cache each turn. Now, setup for the characters and the missions is similar as to that of the head-to-head game, but the rival always places first. You place the character cards of the rival in their track randomly, where I use a d4. So that's 4. 2, 2, 3, and the last character card will be placed in track 1. You'll then need to draw a hand of 6 cards, making sure you have 2 mission cards in that hand. For the rival, draw cards from their hand until you draw a mission card. And again, I'll use a D4 to see where it goes. Both you and the rival will each need coloured tokens or dice to identify PAM stacks, and the rival also requires a decision die for its actions. First, the AI gains attack and guard cards as indicated by its attitude, so aggressive, 4 attack and 2 guard. You play your turn just as a head-to-head game, drawing, attaching lasting cards, attempting to fulfill missions or playing actions, and then checking for victory conditions. But when the rival is defending a mission you are trying to fulfill, it uses all cards in its guard cache as PAM cards. So the first thing to do is to create these stacks of guard and attack cache. So as we are aggressive, there are 4 in the attack cache on this side of the play area and 2 in the guard cache on the other side. And I will then draw up to 6 cards. As before, my second step is to play any lasting cards. And now I can choose to fulfill a mission or play one of my action cards. And we'll assume we're going to attempt a mission. So we'll assume I'm trying to attempt to fulfill this mission. As per the head-to-head game, I can play PAM cards to increase 1 or more of my stats. I'll place 2 cards in Might, 1 card in my Mind stack, and I'll place none for Mysticism. Now for the rival, they will place all cards in the guard cache as PAM, as well as any additional cards as indicated by the infamy level. As it's 0, there are no additional cards played. Now when playing PAM cards, it will first match the stat where I place most of my PAM cards, so that was Might. And when placing cards, it does so face down. The rival follows the same rules for stacking, where it cannot play its second guard card in this Might stack until all other stat stacks have 1 card. Now, as I played no PAM cards associated with the Mysticism stat, the rival is unable to place a card associated with that stat. Therefore, it can only place a card associated with the Mind stat. If the AI had a third guard card, it would be placed here at Might to match the fact that I've also stacked at that stat. If I only played 1 card at each stat, and the AI had a third card to place, you would choose which card to stack by rolling a dice. The values for each stat are then added, where the rival will get to use the mission card bonus, and because I won in Might and equalled in Mind, I can now claim this mission card. You then draw cards from the rival deck until a mission card can be replaced. For the AI turn, you skip the draw phase. In the play phase, you draw and discard 1 card at a time from its battle deck until you draw a lasting card. To determine which rival hero takes this lasting card, roll a d6. A roll of 2 to 4 indicates track 1 to 4. A roll of 1 means the card is attached to the hero with the lowest value of all modified stats, and 6 the highest. Here you add the values of stats and lasting cards on each hero to determine the character that takes the card. Now here I use a house rule modification. When rolling, a roll of 1 to 4 will indicate track 1 to 4, and a roll of 5 or 6 will indicate the lowest or highest modified stat value respectively. For me, it's easier to remember. So if I rolled a 4, the lasting card will be placed on character in track 4. In the next phase, the rival will never play an action card and always attempt a mission. Again, roll the decision die to determine which track the mission is attempted. On a roll of 1 or 5 if using my house rule, the rival will tactically withdraw and nothing happens. On a roll of 6, the rival adds a card to its attack cache and re-rolls again. On a roll of 1 to 4, it attempts a mission in that track. Now, when deciding to place the rival's PAM cards from the attack cache, if the stat value of its character's hero and lasting card equals my stat value that now includes the mission card stat, then no PAM cards will be played for that character's stat. The AI will play its PAM cards associated with its stats, distributing them evenly, starting with the strongest and rolling a d6 if it needs to be decided randomly. I then play my PAM cards as per the stacking rules of a head-to-head game. The rival cards are then turned over and the values are summed as normal with the same winning conditions. It's important to remember to draw cards to the AI cash decks based on attitude each round so it has cards equals to the cash values. The AI wins solo based on gaining victory points. If the rival's deck runs dry, then you shuffle the discard into a new deck and move the infamy marker up one space and re-roll the rival's attitude. Your winning conditions remain the same. Now let's look at the story mode. Story mode lets you play through an adventure-like campaign where you can create your own story. You can even publish these with Cursed Empire or visit their site and look at others, and I'll put a link to their site here. Deck construction works the same way, except your total PAM value for all mission cards can't exceed 40 points, and you may want to be more selective so that some cards associated with particular locations can be included for thematic purposes, but it's not compulsory, where the designer will also provide new deck build lists to support this. For story mode, it's also highly recommended that your hero party selection and battle deck make use of factions so that cards can only be paid for a hero if the faction icons match. Setup is vastly different as story mode does not use the track mechanic from the head-to-head mode and instead creates a chain of mission cards following a story with options to branch to different areas. Let's take a look. The first thing you need to do is to create your story, and this is done using mission cards. And this story is available through the Cursed Empire website and is called Kondar. In the story, you have a start and an end location with branching story paths. So both players start here and can only move to the next missions on completion of the previous one, but you'll need to use tokens or miniatures in order to mark your location as you progress through the game. These tokens don't actually come with the game, but I've used them so they clearly mark the progression through the story. So characters will start here, progress to one of these missions, and then be able to choose one of 3 branching storylines, and the designer of Cursed Empire is currently developing miniatures for the game. Some cards are placed face down and represent secret missions, so you don't know what you're going to face in this area. When creating this story, the victory point value of the mission cards must exceed that of each player's party of heroes. Now, I'm not going to discuss the story for you because I'll leave that for you to discover, and I don't want to spoil it for you. The game phases are followed as normal, so we draw a hand, play a lasting card, and then play an action or attempt a mission. Now, when playing an action card, some stories may indicate certain cards can't be played, such as playing a wilderness card in a city, but if you create your own story, you can do whatever you want. However, any card can be used as a PAM card regardless of location, and mission cards are only used for PAM values in the story mode. Speaking of which, there are some changes to attempting a mission though. We'll assume these 2 die represent the locations of each player. Now, when attempting a mission, the active player can choose which hero to use, and the opposing player can choose which hero to defend with, which opens up more options for character development. And this is why it's really important to make use of factions, because in theory, you could just add all lasting cards to one hero and make use of that hero for the whole game. Using faction icons for lasting cards eliminates this and allows for greater strategic play. Now, other than being able to choose which character to use to fulfill a mission, the rules for using PAM cards, both active player and the defender, remain the same. Now, instead of the defender using their character card and lasting cards to defend the mission the active player is playing against, they can elect to make use of Thargos pushback, where they can get support from the locals and officials instead. They roll a d6 equal to the stat value of the mission card and then add that stat to the result. So in this case, we have mysticism of 1, so we roll 1d6 and add 1 to the result, which is 7. Therefore, the hero will need to equal or beat the value of 7 for mysticism using the character's stats, lasting cards, and any PAM cards played. As an example for this card, which has 2 for might and 1 for mind, I would roll 2d6 for might, giving a result of 7 plus 2, and then 1 green dice for mind, which gives me 6 plus 1. These then become the stat values that the active player must take on with their hero, lasting cards, and PAM cards. Story mode also offers side quests that players can attempt instead of following the main story, as well as secret missions and locked out missions that are removed on completion. What's more, you can even add loot mechanics to your own stories or modify those already created by adding lasting cards under mission cards that heroes can gain on successful completion of a mission. The designer is also looking into rulings for having multiple heroes supporting a mission attempt, which I'm really looking forward to. Regardless, winning conditions remain the same, but you'll need to track victory points with dice or the tracking cards, as most missions remain in place once completed. I hope this makes playing Cursed Empire Heroes of Thargos easier, and thanks for watching. And if you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing. This is Ninja Geek Games. Cheers.